For my life at 28. But there I was, standing in front of a woman who looked like she'd forgotten how to smile, asking her to let me sleep in a barn. Any barn. I had $63 in my checking account, a duffel bag in my trunk, and a name that was currently trending on Twitter for all the wrong reasons. So yeah, I was begging. The woman stared at me from her porch, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She was maybe mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a faded flannel shirt and jeans that had seen better days. There was something about her eyes, though. Like she'd seen too much and decided feeling anything about it wasn't worth the effort anymore. Her name was Morgan Hayes, and according to the hand-lettered sign at the end of her driveway, this was Hayes Family Farm. According to the rumors I'd heard in town, she was the woman whose entire family died in a fire 3 years ago, the woman who never smiled anymore. The woman nobody could reach. "I'm not running a charity," she said finally, her voice flat. I know. I shifted my weight, hating how desperate I sounded. "I can work. I'll do anything. Mucking stalls, fixing fences, whatever you need. I just need a place to stay for a few weeks until I figure things out." Morgan's eyes narrowed. "You're that journalist. The one who slept with her source and tanked that whole investigation." My stomach dropped. The internet works fast, even out here in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours from the nearest city. I didn't sleep with him. But yeah, I'm that journalist. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just studied me like I was a math problem she couldn't decide was worth solving. Why here? Why my farm? Because I called every farm within 50 miles and nobody else even let me finish my sentence. I met her gaze. And because I heard you don't talk to people much, which means you probably don't care about Twitter drama. Morgan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Might have been amusement, might have been irritation. I couldn't tell. "The barn's not heated," she said. "There's a cot in the tack room and a space heater that works sometimes. You'll work 6 to 6, 7 days a week. I'll pay you $200 a week plus room and board. You quit or complain, you're out. No second chances." I felt something loosen in my chest. "That's it? No questions?" Morgan shrugged. "You want me to ask questions?" "No. God, no. Then we're done talking. Barn's around back. Work starts at 6 tomorrow morning. Don't be late." She turned and walked back into her house, the screen door banging shut behind her. I stood there for a second, trying to process what just happened, then grabbed my duffel and headed for the barn before she could change her mind. The tack room smelled like leather and hay and something else I couldn't identify. The cot was military style, thin mattress over metal frame, but it was clean. The space heater sat in the corner, looking like it belonged in a museum. I dropped my duffel on the floor and sat on the cot, pulling out my phone. 47 missed calls, hundreds of texts. My social media notifications had been turned off for 2 days because my phone couldn't handle the volume. I didn't open any of it. I knew what they said. Journalist Alex Rivera sleeps with congressmen to get insider information on corruption scandal. Alex Rivera betrays her principles for a story. Alex Rivera is a slut, a liar, a disgrace to journalism. Except I didn't sleep with Congressman Martin. I didn't even like Congressman Martin. But his wife thought I did, and she had screenshots of text messages that sure looked bad out of context. And she had a PR team that knew exactly how to spin a narrative. The truth was boring. I'd been investigating Martin for 8 months. He'd been texting me information, getting cold feet, asking to meet in person. I'd said no every single time because I wasn't stupid. But his wife found the texts, assumed the worst, and decided to destroy me before I could destroy her husband. She succeeded. My editor dropped me. My newspaper issued a statement about journalistic integrity. My byline became poison. And the story I'd spent 8 months building, the story that would have exposed Martin's embezzlement of federal education funds, died with my career. I turned off my phone and lay back on the cot, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't how I thought my life would go. 4 years ago, I'd won a regional journalism award. 2 years ago, I'd broken a story about nursing home neglect that led to actual policy changes. 6 months ago, I thought I was about to break the biggest story of my career. Now I was sleeping in a barn, working for a woman who looked at me like I was a stray dog she wasn't sure she should feed. But at least nobody here was calling me a whore. At least nobody here knew my face. At least I could breathe without feeling like I was drowning in other people's judgment. I fell asleep to the sound of horses moving in their stalls and wind rattling the barn walls. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I didn't have nightmares about Twitter. Morgan woke me at 5:30 by banging on the tack room door. "You're late," she said through the wood. "Work starts at 6, which means you should be ready at 5:45. I scrambled off the cot, still wearing yesterday's clothes because I'd forgotten to change. "Coming." I yanked open the door. Morgan stood there with 2 thermoses and a paper bag. Coffee and breakfast. We eat while we work. She shoved 1 thermos and the bag at me, then walked away. I followed her out into the pre-dawn darkness, freezing air hitting my face like a slap. The farm was bigger than I'd realized. I could make out the shapes of several outbuildings, rows of what might be crops, or maybe just weeds, and in the distance, the silhouettes of cattle or horses. I couldn't tell which. Morgan moved with the confidence of someone who could navigate this place blind. I stumbled after her, trying not to spill my coffee. "We've got 20 horses," she said without looking back. 12 are boarders, 8 are mine. They all need feeding, watering, stall cleaning. Then there's the cattle. 50 head, they need checking. Fences need walking every other day. Fields need work depending on season. Machinery needs maintaining. You know anything about horses? I grew up in apartments. The closest I got to a horse was a carousel. Morgan stopped walking and turned to look at me. "Great. You're useless." I should have been offended, but she said it so matter-of-factly that it just felt like observation. "I can learn. You better." She handed me a pitchfork from where it leaned against the barn wall. "Start with stall mucking. Dirty hay comes out. Clean hay goes in. Wheelbarrows over there. Dump piles behind the barn. Don't overthink it." For the next 4 hours, I shoveled horse shit. My hands blistered. My back screamed. My shoulders felt like they were made of broken glass. Morgan worked 3 stalls away, moving with efficient precision, never stopping, never slowing. She didn't talk except to give instructions. She didn't ask if I needed help. She just worked. Around 10, she straightened up and looked at me. "Lunch is at noon. You get 30 minutes. After lunch, we're fixing the fence in the north pasture. Wear gloves if you don't want your hands to bleed." She walked away before I could respond. I leaned on my pitchfork, breathing hard, and wondered what the hell I was doing here. But then I thought about my apartment in the city, how I'd been evicted because I couldn't pay rent without a job. I thought about my parents, who'd stopped answering my calls because they were embarrassed by the scandal. I thought about my ex-girlfriend Maya, who'd sent me a text that just said "I can't do this" and blocked my number. Yeah, I knew exactly what I was doing here. I was surviving, the only way I knew how. Lunch was sandwiches eaten standing up while Morgan checked her phone with a frown. "Everything okay?" I asked, then immediately regretted it because she'd made it clear we weren't doing friendly conversation. Buyer backed out on 6 tons of hay. She didn't look up. 3rd one this month. People hear rumors about the farm, they get nervous. What rumors? That it's cursed. That my family died here, and their ghosts haunt the place. That I'm crazy and dangerous. She finally looked at me, her expression still flat. "Pick your favorite. The internet loves a tragic story." I felt something twist in my chest. Yeah, it does. Morgan studied me for a second, and I could almost see her deciding whether to say something. Then she just shrugged and walked away. Come on, fence won't fix itself. We spent the afternoon replacing rotted fence posts in a pasture that seemed to stretch forever. Morgan worked with a focused intensity that left no room for conversation, which was fine by me. I didn't know what to say anyway. How do you make small talk with someone whose entire family burned to death? How do you explain that you understand loss when yours was just a career, just a reputation, just the life you thought you'd have? But as we worked, I started noticing things. The way Morgan's jaw tightened when a horse in the distance whinnied. The way she positioned herself so she never had her back to the main house. The way she checked her phone compulsively, like she was waiting for bad news she knew was coming. She was terrified. She just hid it under layers of ice and efficiency. Around 5, dark clouds rolled in fast. Morgan looked up at the sky and swore. "Storm's coming early. We need to get the horses in." We ran back to the barn, and for the next hour, I learned what chaos looked like. Horses don't like storms. They spook easy, they're huge, and they have absolutely no concern for your personal safety. I got kicked once, stepped on twice, and nearly crushed against a stall door. Morgan moved through it all like a general in a war zone, calm and commanding, talking to the horses in a low voice that somehow cut through the panic. When the last horse was secured and the storm was hammering the roof, we stood in the barn aisle, both of us breathing hard. Morgan had a cut on her cheek from a flying piece of debris. I probably looked like I'd been trampled. "That was impressive," she said. "What was?" "You didn't run. You didn't scream. You just did what needed doing." She wiped blood from her cheek. "Most people freeze up their first storm. I spent 8 months investigating a story, while my source sent me increasingly unhinged messages, and his wife hired a PI to follow me. I learned not to freeze." Morgan's expression shifted slightly. Might have been respect. Might have been just exhaustion. "Go clean up. There's a shower in the barn bathroom. I'll make dinner. You cook?" Sometimes I remember to eat. Close enough. The shower was cramped, and the water was lukewarm, but it felt like heaven. I stood under the spray, watching dirt and sweat circle the drain, and tried not to think about the last time I'd felt this physically exhausted. Tried not to think about anything, really. When I emerged, Morgan was in the barn office, a small room I hadn't noticed before, with a hot plate and a couple of mismatched chairs. She'd made ramen with eggs and vegetables, and it smelled better than anything had in weeks. We ate in silence until Morgan said, without looking up from her bowl, "The fire was electrical. Old wiring in the house. I was in town getting supplies." She paused. "My parents were visiting. My brother lived here with his wife and their kid. All 5 of them gone in less than an hour." I stopped eating, not sure what to say, not sure if I should say anything. Morgan continued like she was reading from a script. "Insurance paid for repairs, but not enough to make it feel like home again. Farm's been struggling ever since. People think it's cursed. Maybe they're right. It's not cursed." I surprised myself by speaking. People just don't know how to handle tragedy, so they turn it into a ghost story. Makes them feel better than admitting sometimes terrible things just happen for no reason. Morgan looked at me then, really looked at me, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. 2 people who'd been destroyed by circumstances and were still standing somehow. "You always this direct?" "Only when I'm too tired to lie." The corner of Morgan's mouth twitched. Might have been the start of a smile. Might have been a muscle spasm. "Finish eating. You need sleep. Tomorrow's worse." I didn't think that was possible, but I learned quick that Morgan didn't exaggerate. The next day was worse. So was the day after that. And the day after that. But something weird happened around day 5. My hands stopped bleeding. My muscles stopped screaming. I started anticipating what needed doing before Morgan had to tell me. I learned the horses' names and personalities. I learned which fence posts were weak, which machinery was temperamental, which cattle were troublemakers. And I started noticing Morgan differently. The way she gentled a spooked horse with just her voice and her hands. The way she fixed a broken gate latch with wire and pure stubbornness. The way she stood in the pasture at sunset, looking at her land with an expression that was part love, part grief, part determination. She was beautiful in the way broken things are beautiful when they refuse to stay broken. Around day 10, we were in the barn during another storm, organizing tack because everything else was too wet to work on. Morgan was oiling a saddle, her hands moving in steady circles, and I was hanging bridles when I said, "I didn't sleep with him." Morgan didn't look up. "Okay, I need you to know that. I need someone to know that. He was married and old, and I didn't even find him attractive. I was just doing my job." Morgan set down the saddle and looked at me. "I know." "How?" "Because you wouldn't be here if you were the person they say you are. You'd be doing damage control, hiring lawyers, fighting back." She leaned against the workbench. "You're here because you're ashamed of something that wasn't your fault, and you don't know how to make people believe you." I felt tears burn my eyes, and I hated it. Hated being this vulnerable in front of someone I barely knew. "How did you—" I started, then stopped. "How did I— what? Get through it? Everyone thinking the worst of you. How did you survive that?" Morgan was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't. Not at first. I spent a year drunk and angry and wanting to die. Then one morning I woke up and the farm was falling apart, and I realized I could either let it die too, or I could save the one thing I had left of them." She met my eyes, so I saved it. Not because I'm strong or brave or any of that bullshit people say, but because the alternative was giving up, and I was too stubborn to let that fire take everything. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For asking. For making you remember." Morgan shook her head. "I remember every day. You asking doesn't change that." She picked up the saddle again. "Besides, you needed to hear it." "What did I need to hear?" "That survival isn't pretty. That some days you wake up and the best you can do is just not quit. That it's okay to be here, hiding in a barn, working yourself to exhaustion, because at least you're still breathing. At least you're still fighting." She looked at me again, and this time there was something soft in her expression. "At least you're not alone." Something cracked open in my chest. Something I'd been holding closed since the scandal broke. "I'm scared," I whispered, "that I'll never get my life back. That this is all I am now. The cautionary tale. The woman who lost everything." Morgan set down the saddle and walked over to me. She stopped close enough that I could smell her, hay and leather, and something earthy and warm. "Listen to me. Your old life is gone. It's not coming back. You can spend years trying to resurrect it, or you can build something new." She paused. "It won't be the same. It might not even be better. But it'll be yours, and nobody can take it from you because you built it from nothing." "How do you know?" "Because that's what I did." She gestured around the barn. "This isn't my family's farm anymore. It's mine. Different. Smaller. Harder. But mine." We stood there in the dim light of the barn, storm raging outside, and I felt something shift. Not attraction. Not exactly. Though there was that too, if I was honest. But something deeper. Recognition. Like looking at someone and seeing not just who they are, but who you might become if you're brave enough. "I think I'm glad I ended up here," I said softly. Morgan's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "Yeah, me too." The weeks blurred together after that. The work didn't get easier, but I got stronger. My hands developed calluses thick enough that I could handle wire without gloves. My back stopped aching every morning. I learned to read weather patterns, animal behavior, the subtle signs that equipment was about to fail. And I learned Morgan. I learned she drank her coffee black with 2 sugars. I learned she hummed while she worked. Old country songs I didn't recognize. I learned she avoided the main house except to sleep, spending most of her time in the barn or the fields. I learned she checked her phone constantly but rarely answered it. I learned she hadn't had a real conversation with anyone in town for over a year. I learned she was lonely in a way that made my chest hurt. Around week 4, We were fixing a water pump that had decided to die in the middle of a heat wave. Morgan was elbow deep in machinery, swearing creatively, while I held a flashlight and tried not to laugh. "This is not funny," she said, glaring at me. "I'm sorry, I'm just impressed by your vocabulary. I didn't know you could use that word as a verb." Morgan's glare softened into something that might have been amusement. "City girl thinks she's clever. I grew up in suburbs, actually. There's a difference." "Oh yeah? What's that?" "Suburbs have strip malls and someone else's idea of culture. Cities have actual culture, and the honest admission that everything's terrible." She laughed. Actually laughed. It was brief and rusty, like she'd forgotten how. But it was real. I felt absurdly proud. "And what do farms have?" I asked. "Farms have honest work, and the space to figure out who you are when nobody's watching." She pulled her arm out of the pump, covered in grease, and sat back. "Also, broken machinery and animals that want to kill you. Sounds perfect." Morgan looked at me, and something in her expression made my breath catch. Yeah, it kind of is. That night, we sat on the porch of the barn office, drinking beer Morgan had pulled from a mini fridge I didn't know existed. The heat had broken, and the air was cool and sweet, full of the smell of hay and night-blooming flowers. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said. Morgan took a swig of beer. "You're gonna anyway. Do you ever think about dating again? About letting someone in?" Morgan was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she said, "I tried once. About a year after the fire. Met someone in town, nice woman, patient with my mess." She paused, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't let her get close. Couldn't risk caring about someone and losing them too. What happened? I ended it before it really started. Told her I wasn't ready, which was true. But also I knew I'd never be ready. She looked at me. Some people aren't meant for that kind of vulnerability anymore. Some people use up all their capacity for love and loss, and there's nothing left. I set down my beer and turned to face her. "That's bullshit." "Excuse me?" I said. "That's bullshit. You're not empty. You're scared. There's a difference." Morgan's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I leaned forward. I spent 8 months building a story that could have changed lives. I had sources, evidence, a timeline that proved systematic corruption. And when it all fell apart, I told myself I was done with journalism. That I'd used up all my passion for truth-telling, and there was nothing left. She was watching me intently now. "But that wasn't true," I continued. "I wasn't empty. I was terrified of being hurt again, of building something just to watch it burn." "So what changed?" Morgan asked quietly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something warm and terrifying unfold in my chest. I met someone who understood what it meant to survive a fire, and I realized maybe I could be brave enough to risk getting burned again. The air between us felt electric. Morgan's eyes were dark and intense, searching my face like she was trying to solve an equation. "Alex," she said, and my name in her voice sounded like a prayer and a warning. "I know. You don't know what you're asking for. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you the truth." Morgan stood abruptly and walked to the edge of the porch, her back to me. "I can't do this. Can't or won't. Both." She turned around, and her expression was raw in a way I'd never seen. "You're going to leave. Maybe not tomorrow or next week, but eventually you'll go back to your real life, and I'll be alone again. And I barely survived the last time I lost someone I cared about. What if I don't leave? What if this becomes my real life?" Morgan shook her head. "You don't mean that. You're in survival mode right now. But once you heal, once you rebuild, you'll remember who you were before all this. And you'll want that life back. And I don't want to be the thing you leave behind when you do." I stood and crossed to her, close enough to touch but not touching. Morgan Hayes, I said firmly. I lost everything. My career, my reputation, my family, my friends, my home, everything. And you know what I learned? What? That most of it wasn't worth keeping. That I was living a life other people expected me to live, chasing goals other people told me mattered. I paused, making sure she was really hearing me. But this, working until my body hurts, taking care of animals, fixing things with my hands, standing in a field and watching the sun come up knowing I earned that moment, this feels real in a way nothing else ever has. Morgan's eyes were shining. Alex, and you, I continued, stepping closer. You make me want to be brave again. You make me think maybe I could build something worth keeping. Maybe we could. I can't promise I won't hurt you, Morgan whispered. I can't promise this will work. I can't promise anything except that I'm terrified and I haven't felt anything in 3 years, and right now I'm feeling everything and it's overwhelming. I know. Do you? Because I'm serious. I'm a mess. I have nightmares. I have panic attacks. I spend half my time convinced I'm cursed and the other half trying to save a farm that's probably going to fail anyway. I'm not easy. I'm not whole. I'm not what you deserve. I reached up and cupped her face, feeling her sharp intake of breath. I don't want easy. I don't want whole. I want real. And Morgan, you're the realest thing I've found in years. She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch like it hurt. If we do this, she said quietly, if we try this, you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll tell me if you change your mind. Promise me you won't stay out of pity or obligation. Promise me if you need to leave, you'll just go. Don't drag it out. Don't make it harder than it has to be. I promise. But I'm also promising you something else. What? That I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to. That I'm here because I want to be, not because I have nowhere else to go. That you're not a backup plan or a hiding place. You're the reason I wake up at 5:30 without resenting it. Morgan opened her eyes, and they were full of hope and fear in equal measure. Kiss me, she said. Please, before I lose my nerve. I kissed her. Soft at first. Tentative, giving her every chance to pull away. But she didn't pull away. She kissed me back like she was drowning and I was air, her hands coming up to grip my shirt, pulling me closer. She tasted like beer and hope and 3 years of holding everything in. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Morgan rested her forehead against mine. Holy shit, she whispered. Yeah. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to let someone in. I don't know how to trust this. We'll figure it out together, I said. One day at a time, one moment at a time. Morgan pulled back enough to look at me, really look at me, and then she smiled. A real smile, bright and genuine and so beautiful it made my heart hurt. Okay, she said. Okay, one day at a time. The farm didn't magically become easier. The work was still brutal, the hours still long, the challenges still endless, but everything felt different when you had someone to share it with. Morgan and I fell into a new rhythm, working side by side during the day, stealing kisses in quiet moments, learning each other's rhythms and habits and fears. She told me about her family, about her parents' laughter, and her brother's terrible jokes, and his daughter's obsession with horses. I told her about Maya, about the investigation, about the moment I realized my entire support system was conditional. We had hard days. Days when Morgan would wake up from nightmares and couldn't let me touch her. Days when I'd see a news alert about Congressman Martin and spiral into anger and grief. Days when we'd snap at each other over stupid things because we were tired or scared or overwhelmed. But we had good days too. Days when we'd finish a difficult project and celebrate with cheap wine and terrible singing. Days when we'd take the horses out and ride until sunset, talking about everything and nothing. Days when Morgan would look at me and say, "I'm glad you're here," and I'd feel it all the way to my bones. Around month 3, Morgan's lawyer called about the farm. Alex was in the barn when Morgan came to find her, and she knew immediately from Morgan's face that something was wrong. "The bank's threatening foreclosure," Morgan said flatly. "I'm 3 months behind on the mortgage. I've been juggling payments, but I'm out of options. How much do you need?" "$60,000 to catch up. Plus, I'd need to prove I can make future payments." She laughed bitterly. "So basically, I need a miracle." "What if we sold my story?" I said suddenly. Morgan frowned. "What?" "The investigation. The scandal. I have all my research, all my evidence. What if we found a journalist willing to take it on, broke the story the right way this time?" She shook her head. "Alex, that could destroy you all over again. Or it could clear my name. And more importantly, it could take down Martin. Get justice for all those kids whose education funding he stole." I grabbed Morgan's hands. I didn't fight back before because I was scared and alone. But I'm not alone anymore. You'd do that? Risk everything again? For the farm? "I'd do it for you," I said firmly. "And for me, because I'm tired of letting fear win." Morgan pulled me into a fierce hug. "We might lose anyway. You know that, right? Even if the story breaks, even if your name gets cleared, the farm might still fail. Then we'll fail together," I said into her shoulder, "and we'll figure out what comes next. Together." We spent the next month working harder than ever. During the day, we kept the farm running. At night, I rebuilt my investigation, reaching out to old sources, fact-checking everything, building an airtight case. Morgan helped, her sharp mind catching inconsistencies I'd missed, her stubborn determination keeping me going when I wanted to quit. Finally, I had something solid enough to pitch. I sent it to 3 journalists I trusted, people who'd stood by me during the scandal. 2 didn't respond. The third, a woman named Jennifer Chen, called me at midnight. "Alex Rivera," she said when I answered. "I thought you were dead, just mostly dead." "There's a difference." She laughed. "I read your pitch. This is good. This is really good. But you know, if I run this, the backlash is going to be brutal. They'll say you're trying to save face, that you're lying, that this is revenge. I know. Are you ready for that?" I looked at Morgan, who was watching me with worried eyes from across the room. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." The story broke on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, it was everywhere. By Friday, 3 major news networks had picked it up. By the following Monday, Congressman Martin had resigned, and federal investigators had opened a case. The backlash was exactly as brutal as Jennifer had warned. Half the internet called me a hero. The other half called me a liar, and worse. My phone exploded with messages, some supportive, most hateful. But I also got calls from my old editor, from colleagues who dropped me, from people who suddenly wanted to hear my side. I ignored most of it. I was too busy trying to save a farm. The story brought attention, which brought donations from people who believed in second chances and investigative journalism. It wasn't $60,000, but it was enough to buy us time. Morgan and I worked with her lawyer to restructure the debt, to create a payment plan the bank would accept. We diversified the farm's income, adding a writing lesson program and a farm store selling produce and eggs. We applied for agricultural grants. We fought for every inch. 6 months after I'd shown up begging for a place to sleep, I was standing in that same spot watching Morgan teach a group of kids how to groom a horse. She was patient and encouraging, completely different from the ice-cold woman who'd hired me. One of the kids said something that made Morgan laugh, bright and genuine, and I felt my heart swell so much it hurt. She caught me watching and smiled, that beautiful smile that still felt like a gift every time I saw it. Later that night, we sat on the porch of the main house, the one Morgan had finally started using again. We'd spent the last month making it feel less like a mausoleum and more like a home. There were pictures on the walls now, of Morgan's family and of us, of the farm and the horses. There was life here again. "Alex," Morgan said quietly, "thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For not giving up on me. For not giving up on this place. For being stubborn and brave and stupid enough to think we could save something everyone said was already lost." I took her hand. We saved each other. I think that's how it works. You find someone who's drowning too, and you just hold on until you both remember how to swim. Morgan kissed me, soft and sweet. "I love you. You know that, right?" I smiled against her lips. "Yeah, I know. I love you too." We sat there as the sun set over the farm, over the life we were building from the wreckage of what we'd lost. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the life Morgan had expected. But it was ours, built from nothing but stubbornness and hope, and the belief that maybe, just maybe, we deserved a second chance. And that was more than enough. If this story found you at the right time, if you've ever felt like you lost everything and didn't know how to start over, if you've ever met someone who understood your damage without trying to fix it, then you know why I had to tell it. Not every love story is about finding someone perfect. Sometimes it's about finding someone who's broken in ways that fit with your broken parts. Someone who doesn't need you to be whole to love you completely. I write these stories because I believe in second chances. I believe in women who rebuild their lives from ash. I believe in love that doesn't fix you, but gives you a reason to fix yourself. If that resonates with you, if this story meant something, leave a like so others who need it can find it. Subscribe because I'll keep telling stories about women who refuse to stay broken. And tell me, what hit you hardest? Was it Morgan's laugh after 3 years of silence? Alex choosing to fight instead of hide? The way they saved each other by refusing to let go? Your story matters. Your survival matters. You matter. Thank you for letting me share this with you. For spending this time with two women who lost everything and found each other in the wreckage. May you find the courage to rebuild when everything falls apart. May you find someone who sees your scars and doesn't flinch. May you build a life so authentic, so hard-won, so completely yours that nobody can take it from you. Because that kind of life, built from nothing but determination and love, that's worth every struggle it takes to create it.